from the Department of Communication in Phillipsburg. This is 30 Minutes with Government with Cedric Peterson.
Hello and welcome to this edition of 30 Minutes with Government. I'm Cedric Peterson. The Voice of Our Children Foundation has officially launched its 2015 calendar. The program took place at the Claude Waddy Legislative Hall on Wednesday, January 21st in the presence of the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, the Honorable Rita Bourne-Gums, and Head of Youth Affairs, Mrs. Shermina Powell Richardson. The foundation chose Pride as the theme for the third edition of the prestigious calendar.
Welcome to the Voice of Our Children's launching of the 2015 calendar, and thank you all for being here. This is the third year that Voice of Our Children has been producing its prestigious calendar. And like all others, we are more than happy to present to you this year's calendar. The reason behind the calendar is, of course, to focus on topics of interest. This year, we have chosen to highlight the theme Pride. We decided to use this theme because we wanted to spread awareness of taking pride not only in yourself, but also in our beautiful, one-of-a-kind paradise, St. Martin. In the calendar, we've chosen to showcase St. Martin and many of our local children. The Voice of Our Children's main objective is to develop, motivate, and stimulate the young minds of our generation. And we believe by spreading awareness through the form of our calendar, we can reach above and beyond. The Voice of Our Children, its president, Ms. Charmaine Olivachi, the members and board members, proudly presents to you the 2015 calendar. I thank you.
Minister of Education, Culture, Youth Affairs and Sports, the Honorable Rita Bourne-Gums, addressed those in attendance where she commended the foundation on its initiative.
First, let me say a big thank you for the sponsors, Winwood Island Bank, GEBE, Emerald Funeral Home, and also the government of St. Martin. To the ambassadors, let me say this, of the Voice of Our Children. You are the ambassadors for all our young people here in St. Martin. You're the voice. And I think that the fact that pride in self, pride in country, is such an important factor for us as Country St. Martin. And if you, the young people, can instill that in others, I believe that's a starting point for us. It makes you round and sound adults. So I thank you for this initiative, and I ask you to continue 10 years from now, through your works, through your ventures, to continue this on behalf of all of us. Thank you once more.
Head of Youth Affairs, Mrs. Shermina Powell Richardson, addressed all in attendance, highlighting the importance of the youth playing an active role now in the development of St. Martin.
It is indeed a pleasure for us as a government to commend such efforts, because it is not just the work of just government to ensure that we engage in the process of educating our community, but it is the job of the entire community to also do so. And this afternoon, we are really happy and thankful once more that Voice of Our Children has seen it fitting to continue with such an important event as the publicizing of a calendar. And the calendar this year, as the Honorable Minister indicated, focuses on pride. And that is something that is very essential for each and every one of us individually, but also collectively as a country. And so we really want to commend Mrs. Olivachi for the good works. Continue to work along with the young people. It's not easy, but it is certainly worth it. They are the future. As a matter of fact, in the opening of the youth desk this week, the beginning of the week on Monday, I was reading one of the comments from one of the youngsters, and they wrote, "We are not the future, but we are the present." And I thought that was really a strong statement, meaning that you need to really consider us as of now and not necessarily for the future. So our development that will enable us, and I'm sure that's what the youngster was actually saying, is that you need to ensure that you are engaged in our total development as of now, so that we can be truly the future leaders that you want us to be. So once more to each and every one of you, the ambassadors, those of you also here, young and upcoming leaders, continue the good works and continue to be an example, a shining example for your peers, because that is very necessary. Nowadays, we look towards foreign countries for I would say, role models, but we have them right here in St. Martin in the form of our very young people who are doing good work towards the island, the country. And so I want to say once more, thank you for continuing. Thank you for persevering. Thank you for committing. And also to the sponsors, thank you for committing every year towards such an important gesture as such, which enhances the educational process of the community at large.
The Department of Collective Prevention Services within the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development and Labor is advising persons planning to travel to the Middle East to take a number of health precautions and to be alert. The advice is given in keeping with international health regulations in connection with Middle East Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus, which is a serious respiratory illness of unknown cause affecting people in that region. According to the World Health Organization, globally there are over 955 laboratory-confirmed cases of infection with MERS-CoV, including at least 351 deaths related to that particular disease. Travelers to this area who have a pre-existing major medical condition such as chronic diseases, diabetes, or chronic bronchitis should be aware that these conditions can increase the likelihood of medical problems, including MERS-CoV infection during travel. Travelers can take the following steps as a precautionary measure. Wash hands often with soap and water. When hands are not visibly dirty, a hand rub can be used. Adhere to good food safety practices, such as avoiding undercooked meat or food prepared under unsanitary conditions, and properly washing fruits and vegetables before eating them. Maintain good personal hygiene and avoid unnecessary contact with farm, domestic, and wild animals. Travelers who return with symptoms from areas affected by the virus should call their family physician immediately. The first quarterly meeting between the governor and the Council of Ministers took place on Tuesday afternoon, January 20th. These meetings normally take place every first Tuesday per quarter. During Tuesday's meeting, the governor was briefed and updated on various issues, such as the budget 2015, dividend policy, and the relationship with French St. Martin. In addition to the quarterly meetings with the council, the governor holds weekly meetings with the prime minister and monthly meetings with each minister in the Council of Ministers. Prime Minister Gums was pleased with the open and constructive communication from all parties during the meeting. Stay with us. You're watching 30 Minutes with Government.
It's that time again where we pay our motor vehicle tax and get our new license plate for the year. The following is the official price list, which includes the price of the license plate. For drivers with license plate designation M and P, you pay $287.50 for gasoline type vehicles and $762.50 for diesel type vehicles. For drivers of license plate designation SXM, MR, PAR, and L, you pay $287.50 for gasoline type vehicles and $762.50 for diesel type vehicles. For drivers with license plate designation Taxi, you pay $287.50 for gasoline type vehicles and $562.50 for diesel type vehicles. For drivers with license plate designation R, you pay $312.50 for gasoline type vehicles and $762.50 for diesel type vehicles. For drivers with license plate designation Bus, G and T, 35 passengers or less, you pay $287.50 for gasoline type vehicles and $562.50 for diesel type vehicles. For drivers with license plate designation Bus, G and T, 35 passengers or more, you pay $1,262.50 for both gasoline and diesel type vehicles. For drivers of license plate designation V, with a weight less than 3,500 kilograms, you pay $287.50 for gasoline type vehicles and $762.50 for diesel type vehicles. For drivers with license plate designation V, with a weight more than 3,500 kilograms, you pay $1,262.50 for both diesel and gasoline type vehicles. For drivers with license plate designation Z, with a weight more than 3,500 kilograms, you pay 1,262 guilders and 50 cents for both gasoline and diesel type vehicles. For drivers with license plate designation for motorbikes, MF, you pay 207 guilders and 50 cents. For drivers with license plate designation for mopeds, MF, you pay 57 guilders and 50 cents. That was the official price list, which includes the price of the license plate for 2015. Please be reminded that the deadline for paying your motor vehicle tax for 2015 is Saturday, February 28, 2015. Don't be late. Pay for your plate. This public service announcement was brought to you by the Department of Communication and the Tax Administration Receiver's Office.
With the current state of affairs surrounding the neglect of our children in our society, 30 Minutes with Government visited the Court of Guardianship and spoke to the department head, Mrs. Richelda Rodriguez Emanuel, who explained the department's functions, the laws that govern the department, and youth rehabilitation.
First of all, the Court of Guardianship falls within the Ministry of Justice, and it serves as a child protection service and youth rehabilitation service. It is established by law. The framework for the functioning of the task of Court of Guardianship is within our civil code. So it's not something that has been then thought out that we can go out and do anything that we want out there in the community. But all our tasks and responsibilities are actually guided by the civil code of St. Martin, but also the penal code. There are certain information pertaining to the task and responsibility and the role of the Court of Guardianship, and that is for the country St. Martin. And internationally, we are guided by the rights of the child, the Convention of the Rights of the Child. So as country, we are signatory to the Convention of the Rights of the Child through being part of the Dutch Kingdom. And so we have to adhere to the rules and the regulations or the guidelines of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. But we also have to, of course, adhere to our own laws, which is the civil code for civil cases and the penal code for cases where, you know, that, for instance, minors with the law. But in principle, the Court of Guardianship task and responsibility, if we look at all child protection services throughout the world, there are certain core business that remains the same. So a child protection service or board in the English-speaking islands within the Caribbean, or Raad van de Kinderbescherming, as we know it in Holland, they have certain core task and responsibility that is throughout the same, and again embedded based on the rights of the child. If we have cases where a minor is being suspected of committing a crime, then also the Court of Guardianship is present, not only at the court hearing, but actually has a role prior to that, because the Youth Probation Office and Youth Rehabilitation task is via the penal code given to the Court of Guardianship. So what happens then? A minor is taken into custody by the police. The police or the private prosecutor, officially the private prosecutor, would send us, it's called a berichtgeving. They will send us information saying, I have a minor in custody and for this and this reason, and the Court of Guardianship has to then go and interview that minor or do a research pertaining to the social environment of that minor. So we don't do investigation. Did they walk with a knife? Yes or no? Did they commit that crime? Did they thief? None of that. But we have to answer to the prosecutor, who is this minor? Is he or she in school? You know, what is the environment? Where are the parents? With who did they commit it? This is the first time. All those kind of things are there. What are the circumstances? What is the mindset of the child? Do you need a psychological report? And if this minor would have to get a measure put in place, what do you advise? Aggression regulation training? What do you advise? Counseling, rehabilitation in a facility, or drug rehabilitation. So we would make a report again, interviewing parents, school, the minor, and putting that on paper, and that goes to the public prosecutor. And based on our report and whatever crime they committed, the report of the police, the public prosecutor would then decide, am I going to give a warning? Am I going to take this to court, to a judge? Or would I just, and what measure, what would I request as being, a suitable continuation for this minor? And with minors, again, based on the rights of the child, you always work on rehabilitation. You don't work on locking them up in prison. You try to rehabilitate.
The Department of Statistics has embarked on a new project called the Household Budget Survey of 2015. The official launch of the project took place on Wednesday, January 14th at a press conference called at the Claude Waddy Legislative Hall, where Minister of Economic Affairs, the Honorable Claret Connor, called for the general public to lend their full support to the survey's success. And head of the Department of Statistics, Ms. McKinney Hickinson, and statistical analyst, Mrs. Saskia Thomas-Salmons, highlighted the importance of the upcoming survey as it relates to the strengthening of our economy.
Today I'm here on behalf of my cabinet to lend support to the Department of Statistics, who is about to embark on a very important project for the country. As indicated by Mr. James, Ms. Saskia Thomas-Salmons, who is the statistical analyst at the Department of Statistics, and Ms. McKinney Hickinson, who is the department head of statistics, is here to share with you a project that will start in a few weeks on the island. And as minister, I would like to encourage the general public to support and to understand the importance of this project. The details of the project will be outlined by the two individuals that are here. I'd like to also acknowledge my Chief of Staff, Mr. James, who is joining us this morning. And as I was saying, that the project is something that I feel is important for not only the statistical department of this country in terms of gathering information that is important and vital to some of the decisions that we would be making as a country, but it's important because of the fact that it gives us tools to be able to make some of these decisions based on accurate information. So without further ado, I'll turn the mic over now to the head of the department, Ms. Hickinson, to enlighten the general public on this project.
Over the past few months, the team at STAT has been preparing for the household budget survey, and we are here this afternoon to launch this project to inform the public about it. And here also with the project leader, Ms. Saskia Thomas-Salmons. We have been hard at work preparing for the kickoff today, and particularly because this survey is very important to the economy of St. Martin. It was last conducted quite some time ago, back in 2005, by the then Central Bureau of Statistics, and so it is the first of its kind to be carried out by STAT. The Household Budget Survey is the instrument that we use to capture detailed data on the income of households, as well as what do households actually spend their money on, and what part of their income goes towards these various categories of goods and services. Why is this so important? It is because once we have a recent picture about the spending patterns of households, STAT can set and re-weight the basket of consumer goods on St. Martin. This basically represents a mix of goods and services purchased by the average household on the island, and it will be the basis for our consumer price index and inflation rate calculations moving forward. Via this household budget survey, we would have a fairly good idea of the total costs. Thank you. Via the household budget survey, we would have a fairly good idea of the total cost of the basket of goods that I mentioned, Also, how heavily certain commodities weigh within the basket based on what portion of the household's budget are spent on these items. Over time, SAC would continue to monitor how prices change and will be able to report on the changes of the cost of living on St. Martin. These statistics are widely used and can impact various groups within our society, for example, to adjust salaries, pensions, rental contracts, etc. Having said this, we are here today to inform the public that we will begin this exercise with a pilot starting on the 15th of February 2015 for a 2-week period. During this period, we will be testing all of the practical aspects of the survey, such as the length of time that it takes to complete the various forms that we have, and it is a digital survey, so we will be collecting data via tablets. We will be testing the receptiveness of persons to the questions, the interviewer skills and the workload that they have throughout the 2 weeks that they will be visiting households. Once we have evaluated the pilot, the actual survey will begin, and this is scheduled for the 1st of April. And depending on the number of interviewers that we end up with, it will run anywhere from 6 to 10.
We're starting off with a pilot survey, as she explained, where we're going to test the skills of the interviewer as well as how the households respond to the type of questions that we're going to have in this survey. Specifically, this survey is to weigh the basket of goods. So for instance, as of now, for the Consumer Price Index, food contributes 10%, but as that was done in 2005, things might have changed, could have, or maybe not, but changed nonetheless today. So we have to reweigh that basket as it affects the consumer, the way the cost of living is calculated. So for instance, that 10% might change to 30% today. Now, inflation in that category as a result would affect the entire inflation rate. So definitely the importance of such a exercise in order to have an accurate calculation of cost of living is vital. The participation of the household also, as a result, is vital because the information comes from the households in order for us to know how to calculate the cost of living. Households will be asked questions on all their expenses in all categories, from food to housing to what they spend on buying a car, what they spend on maintaining that car, to as simple as purchasing a pasticci on the corner. The household that are partaking is a sample of St. Martin's population. So in the pilot, we're now just doing a 2-week period, of which a small sample would be gathered, but nevertheless randomly over the entire island to test the workload that the interviewer can manage at the time, the number of households they can manage. And then in a major survey, which starts in April, there is 1,005 households that is selected. From the sample, all households will be informed prior to the interviewer coming to their house on that they are selected in the sample and asking their participation. It is voluntary, however, we urge the population to partake. It is a very detailed survey, so the questions are quite detailed in terms of asking about your salary, asking about your last GB bill, to see that GB bill so that we can actually make note of the correct, the kilowatt usage and the cubic meter usage of water and electricity and how much that bill is. Please bear in mind, everything is anonymous. The data is not linked to your name. The data is kept primarily and only for the purpose of calculating an average that represents our country. So don't feel that that information that you give to our interviewers go further than the tablet, because once that is saved, they cannot continue to go back into and review and discuss your information with anyone else. The data comes in, it's uploaded into our database, and we continue with analysis. So there is no connection to you personally. Though the questions may come across as intrusive, it is very important that you answer as honest and open as possible for us to get an accurate perception of how households spend their money, and as well as there's a welfare analysis aspect to this survey. Questions such as if an expense is a burden or that you are able to manage with your income. It's important for us to know these type of questions. We will be contacting the households prior to them participating and informing them as much as possible with regards to the type of questions they can anticipate, what is expected from both them, and what to expect from the interviewer. The interviewer name will be divulged to the household that is going to partake, on who to expect is coming to their household, so that you can start to feel comfortable and not, you don't know who's coming and the kind of questions that they might ask. So you will know this in advance. From therefore, you would start to make appointments with that interviewer. There's an average of 6 appointments that you would have to make with this interviewer over the 2-week period. These 6 appointments and can be a little bit more depending on how frequent it's possible within a 2-week period to make those appointments and cover all the 11 questionnaires that you have to go through. The 11 questionnaires each questionnaire is specifically for the type of expense. So for instance, one will be on transportation, the next one on housing, and it's down to the most detailed level, how much you spent on MOPS, for instance, for the past period. You have to realize that an interview can't go past an hour. The reason why, it's both you and the interviewer becomes tired, you the household. So bear in mind that multiple visits are necessary so that you don't get tired, they don't get tired, and the information quality reduces as a result. Additionally, the household will be asked to fill in and log all their expenses that they made throughout this 2-week process, keeping receipts, logging each of those expenses. So like I said, the pasticci on the corner, when you go to the grocery store, keep your receipt, ask for that receipt. As a result, we have a campaign which is Box That Receipt. You will see this poster in some of the major supermarkets and different stores. We ask you to keep the receipts so that we can help in logging that information and checking the accuracy of the way the information was logged, because ultimately it is that expense that is logged that we can use to reweigh the basket on what specifically you buy. Do you buy chicken legs or do you buy chicken breasts, for instance. So it's important to have this detailed information so that we know how to put together the basket of goods as it relates to the Consumer Price Index.
That brings us to the end of this edition of 30 Minutes with Government. For video on demand of this and all DCOM programming, we invite you to visit the official government website, www.stmartingov.org. On behalf of all of us here at the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Cedric Peterson. Thanks for watching.